Thanks for listening to Fluff and Crunch, where we talk about the connection and sometimes disconnect between system, setting, and story in tabletop RPGs. There we go. Good morning,
Jeremy.
Chris. Oh, how are you?
I was good, and then I got a version of my timetable for next year, and they probably shafted me on some stuff. So I'm.
What do you mean your timetable? As in your schedule?
Yes, yeah. So what I'm teaching and when, and they've kind of made some mistakes on it, which I need to get them to unmake so I can.
Are you defining mistakes as things you don't like, or things that are actually mistakes?
No, it's like, so there's this project qualification I teach which we call the extended project qualification, where these pupils basically go and they pick a topic, they pick a hypothesis and a topic, and they go and research whatever they want, and then they present it at the end. But I need timetabled lessons to do that, and they haven't given me any. So that's a mistake, because it's my thing. They know I'm doing it because they've actually, for this year, they're actually paying me to do it, whereas in the past it was just a thing I did. So they've gone, yeah, we're going to pay you for doing it. Oh, we're not going to give you any time to do it. It's like, yeah, that's not how that works. I can't just magic time out of the air. Right. They can't do it after, you have to give me the time to do it. So that's a genuine mistake that they need to sort. But I think they'll go, oh, we can't give you the time to do it. Well, then I'm not doing it.
Gotcha. It's crazy.
That's it. I'm not going to do it with no time. Give me the time, or I don't do it. And you can tell the kids they're not doing it.
And so this is for your next school year, correct?
Yeah.
When does your next school year begin?
September.
Okay. Our next school year, and we're an oddity in this area. The teachers go back this Friday, and the kids come back to the high schools next Friday. So that meaning like third week of July.
Yeah,
but there are breaks throughout the semester. It all works out. It's a great schedule. It's all, so summer just comes to an end. So yeah. So anyway, but I get it. Yeah, you're like, wait a minute. I thought I was going to have a schedule that looked like this. That's what we call your schedule. But so on a happier note, did you? I know that your wife is on vacation right now, but
she's back. She got back on Saturday.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, did you get any gaming in this last weekend?
Yes, I finished off my run of the D&D thing, because I'd spent a whole week doing it on Discord.
Okay.
And then this is going to be out of sequence, so this is going to be very confusing, because we'll have said in another episode that that's what I was doing, and then this one's going to come out early. If you listen to a future episode, the Discord comment will make more sense. I basically ran what is essentially the last episode. We've got 2 weeks till we break up for summer holidays, and I know things will get difficult. So Brian said he needs about 2 weeks to run his. So I did mine. So I did. It all works quite well. I drew out a map of the city, and I used dice to like represent. I did the last bit on the fly. I basically said, like, here's a map of the city. Here's where all the different troops are. I'd use different dice to represent different units. Okay. And then when they decided where their units were clashing against like the bad guy units, I was like, screw it. So I just picked up a handful of dice, and they picked up their handful, and we just like rolled against each other. And if they got good results, then I took away more of my bad results. And then by the end of it, everyone was dead. It was like all of these different armies that they'd recruited, and all of the armies of the Empire had all been wiped out, and all these gods, avatars, and dragons. Literally, the only person that survived was Anubis, the avatar of Anubis. He survived. Everybody else, and like their characters, obviously, but like all of these armies were like, we rescued these prisoners, they died. All these dwarves and all basically by the end of it, everyone was wiped out. It was quite funny. So it was like this kind of city that they'd gone to rescue was probably in ruins again. But they killed their big bad. The big bad lasted. I'd statted him reasonably well. He was quite defensive. He managed to sort of stop some of their bigger attacks, but they were slowly plinking away at him. And then occasionally he was able to throw out like a big attack, and they kind of went, ooh, that was a lot of damage in one go there. So yeah, it worked all right, and it had some reasonably good points that sort of threw in some. It was annoying, like bringing in family members of Scott's character that hadn't been in it for a while, and we weren't even sure. So it didn't really have the kind of the the emotional connection there. But really, when
Yeah.
it's just been the two of them, the alternative would be killing one of them, and I didn't want to do that. So, well,
Yeah,
unless it happened.
then it's like heavy-handed, forced.
Yeah, so it worked. It worked. So I got to use all of my bad guy special abilities.
That's cool.
They basically had a fight on what was essentially a Star Destroyer, because when I came to draw this big Sky Shepherd, I was like, yeah, I'm going for the wedge. It's a Star Destroyer. Yeah, it worked well. It was good fun.
Good.
How about you?
First Century 5e again. And it was good. It was good. I mean, this was more of a information gathering, quasi investigative, making connections sort of episode, or not episode, session. So there was no fighting at all, which, I mean, that's in a 5e game, that's kind of shocking. And I think what we're going to do, I'm guessing, this is just a guess, maybe 1 or 2 more sessions, and then we're going to put that aside for a period of time, maybe play Traveler, and then for just a few sessions because my players haven't, and then go ahead and go back to Star Trek Adventures. We'll see. But today, all our gaming accomplishments aside, today's our reaction to, as our background should indicate, with all those sideways plumes, Cohors Cthulhu Quickstart releases.
Pretty hefty for a quick start, isn't it?
83 pages, of which only, and there's a lot of art in it, so to its credit, but the rules take up the first 26 pages of the PDF, but the first 1, 2, 3, 4 pages of the PDF are just cover and front matter. So then you put that down to 22 pages. Oh no, 22 page, but there's, I'd say 1 in 3 pages have some significant amounts of art on them. So it's not dense, I didn't think.
I think they do a good job of it. They're not skimping on the rules. Maybe we thought that's what they did in the Dreams and Machines, which we need to come back to now that we've got Star Set at some point.
Yeah, true.
But I think they gave enough rules without skimping on anything, without going into too much detail.
Now, I have not looked at the adventure at all. Not a bit.
There are 40 pages ish. That's a decent sized adventure.
Well, and the pre-gens in the back are 2 pages each, and there are, let's see, 2 to 3 pages each, and there are 5 of them, or are there 6 of them? There are 6 of them.
Yeah, there's about 30 pages of the adventure.
Yeah, so it's actually, I'm impressed that there's as much content as there is. Like comparing it to, and this is going to be an on-ramp to our talk, but comparing it to A Quick Trip to France, the Achtung Cthulhu quick start, that's about half the length of half the page count of this. And that includes everything that this includes. In other words, the rules, the characters, the adventure. But let's go ahead and move through it.
Oh, I'm just going to bring up one thing since you kind of mentioned it. You mentioned that there is a lot of art in it. All of the art in the front cover, all through the adventure and the rules, is really good art. It's like really characterful. It really sets the mood. The character art, the pre-gen character art, is awful. Like genuinely, the difference is crazy. So we've got like the thing behind me. We've got art like this.
Yeah,
like nice big landscape things. Looks really fancy. And even the art and the adventure is all like that. And then the character art, which is it. Part of the reason I noticed it is because on the front cover, it was really nice front cover of. I can't tell what it is. But then on the second page, you've got these 2 pictures of a can. I was like, oh god, this is what the art's like all the way through. It's like, it's not. It's almost like cartoon art. It's like really basic. So sorry to be critical of whoever this artist was, but it just hasn't got the same level, and it looks cartoony and just a bit.
Oh wow, yeah. You know what? I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. And yeah, so it's weird actually. It
doesn't suddenly just doesn't fit.
I think you know what it reminds me of actually. I don't know if you'd ever looked at the Cubicle 7 Adventures in Middle Earth 5e books, now long since canceled and unavailable, but it has that look to it. Yeah, it is. It's very
Actually, I
cartoony.
mean,
It's not
generally, a lot of the
bad.
Green Ronin stuff. Oh no, not but things like that. So some of the companies that clearly don't have the art budget, and so they have stuff, and it's okay. But it's jarring when the
Yeah,
majority
how
of the
different
art in
it
this
is.
book is like really just looks amazing, and then we have this character art which just looks. I mean, it looks basic, which I feel really bad because some poor person's done this, and I don't like criticizing someone who's like that's their job.
Yeah,
It just it doesn't look great, and it just if the whole book was in that style, I guess then it wouldn't be. But it's very jarring when the rest of
I
the book
think
looks
that's it.
amazing, and this like looks in it looks like it's from a completely different game.
Yeah, yeah.
If it was all like that, it'd be all right.
Okay.
So maybe it's just for the quick start. I imagine in the book it's not going to be an issue. So maybe it's like we
You,
need some character. We need some character art. Let's get some character art to put on there. But it's kind of
yeah,
everything else looks like dark and gritty and grimy and like scary.
well, and the
And
art
their art's
too.
like colorful.
The art throughout the book also is it's very realistic.
Yes.
You know, in terms of facial expressions and proportions and things like that. It's realistically drawn. I mean, you know, there's tentacled monsters in it. So aside from the tentacled monsters, but other than that, it's done in a realistic manner. And those are okay. So we have now dispensed with that. We don't like the character art, and it's just weird. What about it? What's in it?
Well, we get a we get a two we get a page thing about kind of what's going on. I mean, short version. It's in the Roman Empire.
You get three
Cthulhu's
paragraphs, not even a page. It's mostly a picture, but yeah, it's in there. It's
well, and the next page.
yeah,
It's kind of yeah. So it's like we do actually get a section on the faction of the hidden wars and some of
yeah,
the background. To be honest, I feel like we can kind of skip over that because you know the elevator pitch is this game.
yeah.
It's Roman period. In fact, we're 200 AD. So if you're curious as to where in the Roman period being quite a big one, 200 AD, which I guess is further along than I was expecting. I was
Yeah,
thinking
it's
we
second
might be,
century, so it's in the
yeah, I was thinking,
100s.
yeah, I was thinking we might be BC maybe, or like, you know, zero.
No, I
I
mean
wasn't,
because it's supposed to be empire, not republic.
okay.
So it's in the second century AD Rome or
Uh,
empire.
so yeah, we have a bit of a description about the humans, whoever they tempered, like I guess those are the good guys. Mythos cults, Atlantean remnants. We're going
Yeah.
down that idea again, which Modiphius seem to like to do with their Cthulhu games. That if we're
Yep.
having Cthulhu, we're going to have Atlantis,
Yep.
which is cool. That also links quite well in with the kind of the time period stuff. In fact, again, for one of the things I wanted to use this for, although I want to go back early, I want to do kind of, if I'm going to do this, I'm basically going to play Assassin's Creed and not do so much of the Cthulhu stuff, but it'll be in the background. The Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is the Greek set in ancient Greek, which I know is further back than this, but you know, not a million
There's,
miles
you
away.
know what, it seems to me with these mythos cults and the temporary, these different factions that are provided as existing, then I'm sure in the full book, given the way that Modiphius writes his stuff, like thinking about what they did with Doctrine Cthulhu, writing the history of the Black Sun and the history of Noctvolfa and the history of the myth, that kind of stuff. My guess is the core book is probably going to have, or the player's guide and the GM's guide, because that's the pictures they provided in this show a GM's guide and a player's guide like Octone Cthulhu. So it's not a single book, but I'll bet you're going to get a lot of history on these things so that you could drag it back to BC Greece.
Ooh, I just thought of something else, which is a completely stupid thing. Oh, actually, we haven't quite got to it. So yeah, we got this little section at the start there, which is fine. Nice bit of background. Again, some more cool art.
Well, you know, I think it's smart here in the quick start, and I think they need to do this. They can't just say, oh, it's second century Roman Empire. What?
No, you're right. Yeah.
They can't just say that. That's weak. They got to layer some of that like secret war mythos stuff onto it and show like, how do we weave this into the real history or replace part, you know, how do you take some sense of the real history of this era and then layer these things onto it? So I took this is a good start. It's interesting. The idea of these different factions starts getting me thinking about, you know, ways to set up stories. You know, if you have a faction, some nefarious cult group that is off to do something, you've already got an antagonist that you could build stories around. So that's good. That's just a couple pages.
this is a stupid thing to like, but I like the fact that on the challenge dice, which I will be 100% buying, it has little swords instead of little bullet things as the
Yes.
hit.
Yeah,
And
I
it
think
even
that's
says
neat.
in the rules, one gladius represented by one sword indicates a score of one. I'm like, oh yeah, I want the little swords.
And then it said two gladii.
Oh, very good, yeah.
Thank you. Like
Which is
cacti instead of cactuses, which is actually the plural of
so this
cactus.
is obviously this is not a reason to like, and we can't get these dice yet. But I was like, oh, I like that.
I
I
don't think
like
they'll
the
care. I just
no.
think they'll be happy that you'll purchase it. But the dice do look nice. I'll give
So
them
I
that for
like
sure.
that because obviously other combat dice tend to just have sort of two splodges,
Right.
and then whatever symbol is the bad symbol is the effect symbol. In this case, we've got swords and a Cthulhu. So that I thought
Yeah,
was
actually,
cool.
these are, and it looks like a light colored stone with red markings on it based on the pictures I'm looking at on my screen right here. These challenge dice actually look more easily readable than a lot of the other ones. Like I bought, because they were super on sale a couple of years ago, I bought 3 sets of John Carter dice that I often use at just whatever 2d20 game I'm running, and the difference between the effect and the twos, it's a little blurry. Like that's a spiky explosion and that's a blurry explosion, and one of them's one and one of them's a, and this is a lot easier to read. So on challenge dice, yes, obviously the game uses challenge dice like virtually all the 2d20 systems. It adjudicates them in the exact same way that it does in all the systems now. So there's nothing novel or different about the role of 20s and the role of d6s as challenge dice. That's the same.
So
What
then
else?
we get, well, let me start going through it.
Yeah.
I thought I'd just suddenly quickly pop up the Acting Cthulhu. I want to see what the difference was. I mean, the short version is a lot of this is very similar to Acting Cthulhu. They're trying to make it different. Here's one difference. In attributes, we have agility, same as Acting Cthulhu. Brawn, same. Coordination, same. I'm skipping one on purpose. Insight, reason, and will. But then we have now, and I guess this is one of the things that I think people have been asking for a long time. Why doesn't 2D20 have, let's for all intents and purposes, charisma?
Right.
Doesn't have a charisma. So we now have a new attribute, gravitas.
Mm-hmm. Which sounds kind of Romanish.
Good orators and ideal leaders, ones who easily, I think, which is weird because you think, well, what we didn't need this stat previously,
right? But you need it now, yeah.
But suddenly we need it now. It's like I'm pretty sure anything. Anyway, so we've now got a charisma stat. They haven't taken
and there
one
are
of the
7
others out.
stats. Then
they've added in another stat, which I have no issue with that. Anyway, so there we go. There's a 7th stat.
Yeah.
Skills wise,
I mean, it's
academia,
like ages ago at D&D, some people would play with comeliness as a stat, which is kind of goofy, but charisma is like the personality side and comeliness is just how you look, whatever. Yeah. But yeah, so 7 stats, and then skills you were about to say.
Yeah, so we got so again, these are similar, but obviously there's going to be some difference with that and Cthulhu. So we got vehicles. Academia, athletics are the same. We've got crafting instead of engineering, I guess. Although no, because we have engineering. All right, we have crafting instead of God knows what, because engineering still exists. Fighting, medicine, observation, persuasion, resilience, stealth, survival, and tactics. So actually what we have is crafting as an extra, and we don't have vehicles, which does beg the question, how do you ride a horse? But I'm assuming, I mean, I put it
maybe
on,
that's
I put it on
survival.
Yeah.
Because survival encompasses a character's knowledge of how to live and operate in the wilderness without the comforts offered by civilization. So maybe that sits under that.
So it's, again, it's closer to Acting Cthulhu than anything else. We haven't gone down to 6 skills. We've basically got the Acting Cthulhu list. One's come out, one's come in.
Yep. Focuses are the same. Yeah. Although one thing though, focuses mechanically are the same as they are in Acting Cthulhu and Star Trek Adventures, but it doesn't say explicitly, and let me go look at the character sheets, are the focuses permanently nested under a skill? And I'm going to look. Okay, it appears based on the character sheets that they are, because they're written in the same manner as they are on Acting Cthulhu pre-gens, where it has the skill rating, and then it has
focuses.
the focus is in parentheses immediately after that. So I think by implication here, the focuses are permanently nested under skills like in Achtung Cthulhu. Okay, so there's another like 1-to-1 similarity.
Well, it's funny looking at the 2 pages. The font is smaller. The font is a lot smaller on Cohors than it is on Achtung Cthulhu. I mean, that might be different in the main book, but that actually is a very small. I'm struggling to read this. I've just read this. This is actually quite a small font.
Your PDF reader has a little plus button.
Yeah, but then I don't have. I like to have the whole
I know
page.
you don't see the whole thing. Yeah.
Then I can. So I'm just going to move this to a different screen. Now it's bigger.
Okay. Now core mechanic, it's the same.
Yeah, that's not a huge surprise.
There's nothing new or different. We're not playing with. We're not doing any kind of dreams or machines here. The mechanic is the same. The way you score critical successes is the same. Complications, so all that is exactly the same. If you're familiar with Achtung Cthulhu, this is the same thing.
We're back to we've got truths,
which is Achtung Cthulhu.
Yeah. Now there's a bit at the bottom of truths which I don't think I've seen before, but now I can't find the truth section.
It's on page 14.
No, I meant in the other one. I think
about it?
that they're making truths more obvious. Is obvious the right word? But they're trying to put it. Truths in. So, for example, truths in Achtung Cthulhu are kind of quite small. We've got this thing about secret truths.
Oh yeah.
Secret truth is something about the character is not yet known and can be revealed during the game. At first, this truth is I have a secret truth. I mean, they've added a little quirk thing in here, so players. Again, this is something that could be in any version, as far as I can see.
I see 2 things in truths. First off, and this is in Star Trek Adventures more prominently, I think, in that the idea of putting a number to a truth. Like and the example is, you could say there's smoke. If they're in a building that's on fire, you could say, well, there's smoke. But you could say there's a lot of smoke. Well, how do you adjudicate a lot of smoke? You could say it's smoke 2. So that means it would add 2 to the difficulty. And I think that's an easy, boneheaded way to put a little more mechanical, like make it a little more concrete mechanically. Because normally, you say a truth makes something easier or harder, typically by +1. Well, by putting that X number after it, you increase that. But secret truth, I think that's funny. I have a secret truth.
It's funny that it's in this game and they've not done it before. I mean, I guess the closest it comes to is kind of how Infinity had this whole bunch of things, how you had secret objectives.
Well, I mean, but there's plenty of stuff that, it's nothing's there until someone thinks of it. And the idea of having what it looks like to me is these things are, this almost seems in a way kind of like Star Trek Adventures creation and play, where I don't know if you've ever done that before, and actually worked through it. But, creation and play, where you start off with your character's race and role, and then a couple of you only establish a few of the attributes and like 1 or 2 of your disciplines. And then as you play, you add additional ones, you add values, you create your character as you're playing. And in a way, this echoes back to that, the idea that like, there's something about my character that my character knows that can do or is a truth about them that you haven't decided on, but then you create, and then it changes from I have a secret to it turns into a truth when you decide to activate it and then actually define it. I like that because, how many times you make a character and you think, oh, this is going to be really cool, some aspect of it, and you never use it.
Yeah.
So
that's new and different, and that could easily be put into any other 2D20 game very easily. So then we carry on through a bunch of rules that we've seen before: complications, success, skills, improving the odds, which is the same.
It's all same. 1, 2, 3 for additional 20s.
Momentum, which is basically the same. Again, like create a truth keeps being bumped up the sort of the list. It like I feel like at the start it was like, oh, not really, this isn't a thing, and now it's like they've realized that truths are actually quite useful in combining narrative and system things, and they're trying to make them more prominent. But essentially everything else, the momentum is the same. Threats basically the same. We have fortune rather than determination or anything else weird, which is essentially the same. The action rules are pretty much the same,
except
except for because they've decided to go a bit more melee heavy, we have
Which they explicitly
somewhere.
state. They
Yeah.
mention that there aren't many ranged weapons. There are ranged weapons, but at this era, they've decided to hold on to this piece of the real history and say, look, melee weapons were far more common than ranged weapons. So if you notice that's intentional. Fair enough.
So we have half a page on rules for, well, technically it's a page because there's also a surprise. We have half a page for rules on reach and guards. So going
Mm-hmm.
back to Conan, where essentially we have, where if you have your weapons all have a reach rating. So there's a lot of things we just have, you have reach and you just don't. Now we're back to everything has a reach rating.
Yep.
And you have this idea of having guard up. And if you can get inside someone's guard with a little weapon, you can give them lots of stabs. But if you're trying to fight someone with a short reach weapon and they've got a long reach weapon, it's like, if you've got a dagger and they've got a pole arm, then it's very, very difficult. And it essentially makes it more difficult.
Well,
I
what I
haven't
think,
read through this to see if it's easier to read than Conan, but it's here.
I think actually I have read through it, and I'm not going to go into how to do it in detail, but I think that its explanation, the explanation of those two things, is better. I think they've gotten better at writing rules, of explaining their rules. But I mean, in effect, if you like a little crunchier combat, and you like to have other variables that make sense to play with, think about it. If someone has a dagger and someone has a spear, and they square off against one another, depending on how far they are apart, one
Yeah.
could have an advantage over the other by virtue of the size of the weapon. And that's where reach comes into play. And then guard is essentially you're aware and defending yourself. Like if you are prone, you can't, you're not going to be able to hold up a shield and be able to parry with a gladius like you would if you were standing. And so guard takes that into effect. So I think the inclusion of these two extra variables, factors, whatever you want to call them, makes combat a little crunchier, a little more granular, but also makes it a little less narrative and not hand wavy. But it'll give players, I think, who want to think through, okay, how am I, in terms of the details, how am I going to work combat? I think it'll give them a little more to chew on. And I mean, I think it's one of those things that it's really easy in Conan to forget reach and guard and never do them. That's me. But if everyone at the table is up to speed on them, it adds two extra wrinkles that can make combat a little more interesting. I don't think slow down, but I just think more interesting.
No,
So
I think it's
I'm
just
cool
something to
with it.
remember. When we first played Conan, we did. I don't know whether we forgot or we just didn't realize it was a rule. When we played it more recently, when we were doing like League of Legends, but using the Conan rules, we did remember, and it made a massive difference because
Mm,
like when you've got a shorter weapon, it was all about can you get inside their guard, and
yeah.
actually then it was a case of one of the characters, one of Scott O'Brien, going, I'm going to get a spear because spears are now like a really
Yep.
good thing. Once someone gets inside your spear, you're in trouble. But like having that spear is like, oh no, you don't. That was really good. I like the fact they've got these surprise attack rules, which literally does spell out like if you can attack someone without them knowing they do not have guard, your thing
Yep.
becomes intense, which just means you can like properly
Yeah.
rack in a lot of damage, which is great because that's what I want to use this for. I want to use this for an assassin's game.
Yep.
So like,
Well,
yay.
it too is that makes sense of, in 5e, the idea of a rogue's sneak attack, the idea that you're doing extra damage because you're able to choose the target a little better, more effectively, because
Yeah.
they don't know you're coming after them. I think adding the intense effect makes sense. Okay, so that I think that's cool. So the
The thing
combat is
here
a
is
little
that
more granular, and I think it's a
in
good thing.
2d20, you can sneak up behind someone and probably one shot them. This makes it easier.
Yeah.
In 5e, you can't. Like your rogue sneak attack is usually enough to take out really wimpy, rubbishy little guards
Yeah.
in one hit. But mostly what happens is your rogue is just sitting in there, hoping they don't get hit, using the flanking rules or your mate being within 5 inches, doing loads more damage because literally the sneak attack on a rogue in 5e is how they deal with damage, which is comparable to other classes. It's not really about how does a rogue one hit a bad guy and assassinate them, which is narratively what it's meant to be, but in reality, that's not where it works. Whereas, 2d20, you can one shot people.
Here's something else that it adds. We didn't mention it: dual wielding. It adds dual wielding. Page 21. It is a momentum spend now.
Mm.
Instead of you spending like, swift action in other games, you're buying an extra action. And that's more of like a meta gamey side. This, they actually try to make sense of why could you attack? Like if you had two weapons, you have to spend, now if you want to make an extra attack with an extra weapon that's in your offhand, you spend one momentum, you can make another attack with that weapon, and it's at +1 difficulty. And then there's a little box out that explains like the rationale of dual wielding. And that's one thing that, like in Eris, I've had questions about, well, what about dual wielders? Because people want to see that one-to-one translation from 5e. I think this makes sense of it. I think this works. It explains it's not really giving you an extra attack. It's enabling you to spend to have this because you've got a weapon in another hand. Okay, that makes sense. So, and again, another wrinkle, another little variable to make melee combat a little more granular, a little crunchier, but I think in a good way.
I think it's actually good that I think they have actually removed a whole second action, because that was one of the downsides previously, that you didn't need to dual wield because you could just hit someone else. Although even here, there's a secondary target thing, but the secondary target costs 2 momentum, as opposed to, dual wielding is 1 momentum to hit a second person with +1 difficulty. So I like that as a rule. Plus people like dual wielding ever since Drizzt was a thing, because everyone cool has to have, 2 weapons, because obviously, that's how everyone fought back in the days, with 2 scimitars. No one ever fought with one thing ever.
Attacks, mental and melee attacks are the same. I don't. Is there anything that's different? I mean, in terms of
it might be, but it's pretty similar. Like injuries, again, we still have.
Yep.
We have the rule of 5. We have stress and injuries. There's a rule about fatigue, which because I haven't played Acting Cthulhu a lot, so I don't know if that's new.
It is. I mean, fatigue, and in other systems, drain causes fatigue. You lose maximum stress because of some reason, and thus you're going to run out of stress sooner, because on a temporary basis, as long as this truth is in effect, your maximum stress is lower. That's nothing new.
But pretty much, there might be the other thing that's different. It's similar. Magic's a bit different, because we've got this rule about how many spells you can have, and these things about a mantle. That's different.
Actung Cthulhu.
Is it really? But they Acting Cthulhu has rules for mantling.
Yep.
I don't remember the rules about mantles.
Yeah, it's the system, based on what I've read in here. This gives you 2 different types.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, battlefield. Wow. So it's how little I know that.
Yeah, it has battlefield magic, and it has ritual magic, or ritualistic magic. It's the same as Actung Cthulhu. It has traditions, for which they only provide 2 here: the runic and oracular traditions. One of them is based off insight. That's oracular. You have traditional spellcasters and research spellcasters. So ones that cast using insight and ones that cast using reason. So this is no different. Maybe there's going to be a third or more. It doesn't say one way or another. It says player can learn in 3 ways, 2 of which are available here. So honestly, this is Actung Cthulhu's magic system. That it's the same.
And then we're into the adventure.
Yeah.
So it's
miscast spells the same. There are where is it? I wonder if there are
character art is so much better in Acting Cthulhu.
What's that?
I was going to compare the characters in the pre-gens. It's the character art in Acting Cthulhu is prefer that. It's
resisting. It's basically the magic system. I mean, the magic system here it's 3 pages. 3 pages, and 2/3 of one of those pages is an example. So it's really not that much, but based on what I've read here, it is the same magic system as Actung Cthulhu. So you have battlefield and you have ritual magic. And when you cast, you are taking stress damage yourself by rolling challenge dice, and you can use momentum to offset that. That's so, and I think that makes sense if this is supposed to be set in the same world, but 1800 years before Achtung Cthulhu, that the rules of Magic are the same. The game side of it is the same.
Yeah, I mean, essentially it's super similar.
Yeah. So what do you think of it? I mean, we're not gonna, no sense in delving into the adventure because we're not gonna read and react to it at the same time.
I think I have to come kind of back to my original, or maybe not my original thing back was of Cohors Cthulhu was like, I was hoping for, but it's because we had that, like you said, the wall. We were hoping for Elder Scrolls and we didn't get it, but actually we knew we weren't getting Elder Scrolls, and as soon as we saw the wall, we knew it, and we'd heard rumors about a Roman version, so it wasn't a huge surprise. I still feel like it's this thing of like I don't see the market. World War II has Nazis. People like fighting Nazis, and like right now, if I was going to run, Indiana Jones just came out.
Yeah.
If I wanted to run an Indiana Jones game, I'd use Achtung Cthulhu because it's set in roughly the right time period with the right level of technology, and it has supernatural stuff in it.
You're all set. You got it.
You just limit your players from doing magic, but the bad guys can. You're fine. I'm not seeing that there's people out there going, what I really want? I want a Cthulhu game set during the 2nd century with the Roman Empire. And I still feel like that now. That I had that idea that, actually, I could use this to play Assassin's Creed because, you have that long period of history. Yes, okay, things did change between the Greeks and the Egyptians, or the other way around, and the Romans and so on. But not massively. There's little times when the technology changed, but generally we were using a similar level of everything. Yeah. Okay, the Romans changed the warfare, but generally the level of technology for that whole time period is roughly the same, which means I feel like you can do any kind of ancient stuff using these rules, and that's cool. But I'm just not excited about it.
Here's what I think is that you may have folks who look at this and they say, I really like the 2D20 system. I'd like to play more of a fantasy type of game. And this is a fantasy game, in terms of swords and armor and monsters. Okay. But they like mythos. And maybe they like the idea of Modiphius is, it would seem, at least through 2 games, building a world in which there is this interpretation of the Lovecraftian mythos that form this secret side of this world, and that this is one point in it, and Achtung is another point in it, and people dig that. They think that's a neat idea. And I think, the Rome, the Roman imperial era, historically draws interest. It's iconic in terms of the buildings and the look, and looking at the uniforms and what the legions did, and some of the names, and as in not the names themselves, but like the people, some of the biggest personalities. That's maybe of interest to people, and they go, that I didn't ever think World War II is an easy sell, but this is like, wait a minute, did you ever think about playing in this? You go, oh wow, I hadn't thought about that. And maybe they're hoping that will hook people, that combination of things. I mean, here's my trouble. I have a good friend of mine, actually the gentleman a couple of years ago who did the Twilight 2000 episode with me, John. And I remember he's like permanently done with zombies. Like zombies, the whole like zombie apocalypse thing just bores him to death. And I like Achtung Cthulhu, but outside of Achtung Cthulhu, like I'm mythosed out. Like I'm done with, like, gibbering blobs and tentacles and stuff like that actually don't interest me outside of the interpretation of them, the special interpretation of them that fits within Achtung Cthulhu. I'm like, I just like, I don't need to see that everywhere. Like a period, let's have a period costume mythos thing here. Let's do one in the Renaissance, and wait, let's do one in pre-Columbian Central America. Like, I don't need that. It's just not that interesting to me. So yeah, it doesn't. I mean, I appreciate and I want to learn more about Dreams and Machines. I'm curious about this may sound odd. I'm not necessarily interested in the world. Like I'm not immediately drawn to it, but I'm curious about it, which might lead me to be interested in it. I am interested in the rules modifications.
Yeah.
There really are no rules modifications aside from the resurrection of reach and guard, dual wielding, which I like those. I like those. And I could see incorporating them easily into any other game where melee combat is prominent. So from that's good, but other than that, I'm like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with this part of the character.
No.
I think it's perfectly solid. I think the problem is it's so similar rules-wise to Acting Cthulhu that Acting Cthulhu is still, I think, the best interpretation of 2D20. This could be a better written version, but I'd still point people to Acting Cthulhu because it has rules for guns. And, you know, generally people go sort of guns of this. Yeah. If you wanted a basic, the thing is now, if someone was like, I really want to do a fancy version of 2D20, I'd point them to your game because that's what you've done. You've done a fancy version of 2D20 now. This isn't a fancy version of 2D20. It's a Cthulhu version of the Roman thing. It's still, you know, yes, it still has magic, but the magic is, we don't know, to be honest. But, you know, the magic is still going to be semi-limited like it was in Acting Cthulhu, like it's been in Conan and other things. You have
the magic is playing with fire. The magic is playing with fire because it's rooted in like mythos magic, which to me makes perfect sense. But that doesn't fit high fantasy.
No. If you're wanting to play another fantasy game, this is going to get you closer than some of the other games maybe so far. But by Conan would still be better. Yeah. But if Conan's too crunchy for you, okay, this is probably going to be your thing. But, you know, possibly not. We still don't have different races in here or anything. No. And it's still based in Earth thing, but with like, you know, the whole Cthulhu thing.
You know, I wonder with like the Atlantean backgrounds or some of those things, I wonder if there are some, and I haven't looked at the pre-generated characters in detail, but I wonder if there are talents or aspects of those characters that make them not necessarily a different race, but like a sub-race. You have a bunch of different kinds of humans, which in effect, by virtue of which when you choose, gives you that sort of, gives you something like that. Yeah, if you like classical era history, okay, if you like that, or it interests you and you want to know something about it, and the idea of like the imagery of like, oh, this like North African legionnaire who's, you know, a man or whatever out of place in Germany, that'd be really cool. Well, then this'll float your boat.
I'm not convinced this is a time period people that bothered about. I mean, okay, I compare most things to you know, film or other things, but I'm thinking like, right, Roman films, Gladiator, Ben-Hur, Life of Brian. I mean, you know, it's not a setting that, you know, swords and sandals isn't a thing that, you know, when Gladiator came out, people didn't then go, oh my God, we got to have tons of these. They did Gladiator and then no one did any until they did a remake of Ben-Hur. This isn't, I think, you know, to me, if they'd gone further back and done ancient Greece, right, well, then you have like, you know, the Greek gods and you have myth and legend, that might have been better. I think there's more people that are interested in that stuff. Well, maybe it's just me. So then in which case,
at least, I mean,
or like you mentioned, the Renaissance. The Renaissance is cool. There's loads of other cool stuff in the Renaissance. That would have been interesting. And then you've got, you know, the Renaissance gives you the discovery of America and stuff as well. Mm-hmm. That would have been a really cool, interesting time period. I think, you know, and then that would have lent itself more into a kind of other kind of fantasy games thing. I think this, you know, it's cool. It's all right. Yeah. But this might genuinely be one I go, you know, will I buy it? Like Dreams and Machines, I'm not sure about, but I've already bought the starter set. I'll probably buy the Dreams Machines books because it is a different interpretation of the rules. This isn't a setting I'm fussed about, and it's not a different interpretation of the rules because it's so close to the core and Acting Cthulhu. And I don't think I can take this and play it massively. So although I'm like, I could play Assassin's Creed in it, that's I don't think I'd ever use this stock setting because I'm just not fussed. And I just don't think there's going to be many people. So this could be this genuinely could be like a bomb for them. Oh yeah, we won't know until it comes out.
Yeah. I mean, I hope it's successful, but I mean, you're right. I look at it and I don't see rules innovations that interest me. Although I understand if it's set in the same world, why they wouldn't. They would tweak things at the margins,
Oh yeah.
but they wouldn't make something entirely different. But then yeah, the setting doesn't really jump out and grab me. So, and I don't, I'm beyond the point where you look at something and you say, oh, I'm going to buy that for the rules because I'm going to do something different with it. Well, I already have those rules.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think when they announced it, I was like, yeah. And then I thought about, it might be all right. And then I'm seeing it again, I'm still back to kind of, yeah, it's all right.
You're like, yeah, that's all right. But yeah, there's a difference between, like we were interested in Homeworld and then we were disappointed by it. And this, we're like, okay, yeah, I get it, but I'm not, there's nothing drawing me toward it. So who knows? We'll see what else gets released.
If they'd thrown out a quick start for Homeworld where you could see up front it was the same rules as Star Trek, I wouldn't have touched it with a barge pole. But we didn't know that. We thought, oh, it's a completely different setting. It's going to have completely different rules, and it didn't. Whereas, I mean, actually releasing this quick start might cause some problems. Someone else had put on Facebook that there already are a bunch of other kind of Roman era semi-fantasy kind of role-playing games out there. So
no idea.
No, exactly, because I think it feels like a niche. So whether you look at it as from like ignore the 2D20, it's a Romans versus and Cthulhu. That's like a niche of a niche. Whether you look at it from the Roman point of view or the Cthulhu point of view, it's a niche of a niche. But within 2D20 now, I think this is going to be one that people aren't going to, like you and me, like you said, people buy these for the rules. We might get Dreams Machines because the rules are going to be different. I got Homeworld because I thought the rules were going to be different. It's always interesting to look at new versions of the rules. This hasn't.
Yeah, it doesn't have.
I am genuinely thinking like I just don't know who it's for. I feel like it's someone at Modiphius has got a big thing for the Romans and convinced the guys at the top that like this is what they should do. Let's do a Romans Cthulhu and convinced enough people let's do this.
It's not just that. It's also the Cthulhu thing. But that has had enduring popularity, it seems.
Yeah. I hope it does well, because I think what would be a shame is if it came out and it didn't do well and they think, oh, Cthulhu plus different time period isn't popular. I think no, that'd be the wrong takeaway for me. It'd be like you picked the wrong time period,
right? Maybe
like if you picked something a bit more, if you went like samurai era Japan, maybe that would have been interesting. People maybe would have gone that. If you'd done the Renaissance era, maybe that would have, or if you'd done Cthulhu in space,
11th century Russia.
I think there's a maybe different thing, or if you'd actually just released a book for historic Cthulhu and gave a bunch of different options for different time periods
instead of it being a separate property unto itself.
Yeah, it kind of gone like here's the rules and we'll give you different adventures for different time periods. Here's the factions that have run throughout all of history, and here's the rules for doing anything up until the point everything pre-gunpowder, and then you could release different rules for like here's a Russia book, here's a Japan book, and you could just release these things which had a couple of extra new weapons, setting tweaks and so on. That probably would have been more successful than right, we're doing a whole new launch brand line which is going to be Romans and things. I think that it's not just a book, is it? Aren't they doing like miniatures and things as well?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh well.
All right. Well, we'll see what else they put out.
We won't know, because we won't actually know if it's successful, because the role-playing industry is not very good at saying what is or isn't successful, right. Other than our assumption is if something gets new stuff, then it must be.
Well, you just also pay attention to people's responses to it.
Yeah. I mean, we know Star Trek's successful because people talk about it, and it has, and it has lots of, they keep making stuff for it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right.
But yeah, there's nothing wrong with this. There's just.
Nope. So it's one of those ones that I will monitor. How's that? I will monitor.
Yeah. I mean, I'll probably end up, buying it, because it'd be a bit annoying to this be the only 2D20 core book we do know. Or maybe I'll actually go, you know what? I'm going to wait and hope it's on sale at some point and then order it off the website.
You could do that. That's when you're going to get your whole Homeworld collection. But anyway. All right, cool. Thank you so much for listening. You can visit our show's homepage at anchor.fm/fluff Crunch. That's FLUFFNCRUNCH. We would really appreciate feedback and reviews on whatever podcasting platform you're listening to this on. Thanks so much.